Have you ever had a voice inside of you saying, I want to write poetry, but I just have no idea where to start? Well, first, let's take a deep breath and take all of the pressure off. Because today we're going to explore the best ways that you can improve your poetry and discover some of the top mistakes that most beginner poets make as well. Welcome to the Poetry Vessel. This is our new Master Your Craft series where we help you take your poetry from lead to gold. And joining me today is Malibu Poet Laureate, published poet of over 18 years, and my husband, Nathan Hassall.
Which is my best credential.
Absolutely is. So Nathan, I know we have a lot of people out there watching who are at all levels of their poetry journey. We've got beginners, we've got advanced poets. In your experience, what is the most common mistake that you see amongst beginner poets today?
I want to start with, do not be afraid of reading poems. If you feel like, oh no, this is going to influence my voice too much, my precious voice, good. You want your voice to be influenced by the best that came before you. And by reading different things, you'll work out, one, what it is you're attracted to. You'll find new techniques to express yourself clearly. And you'll synthesize all of these different interests that will find your unique voice. One small bit of theory. Harold Bloom spoke about the great poets purposefully misread their influences. So you read your influences and then you turn into a paraphrase or a distortion because that's where you find yourself. So I would say make sure that you're reading poems from other people, contemporary and from the past. And what will happen is that maybe at first you imitate them. Imitation's a good thing in the beginning because you're learning techniques, but then you'll start to distill that into your own voice. And the more that you find influences, the more your voice will become unique and shine forth in the way that you want it to. So yeah, I would say that not reading poetry widely is a common mistake that I see.
Yeah, and I think you identified a fear that a lot of people have of, well, I'm worried I don't want to sound too much like them. Many poets have a fear of reading poetry widely because it might influence their work, and they don't want to obviously plagiarize or sound too much like another poet. So, what would you say to those people who have that type of fear?
I'd say that poetry has been charted throughout human history by people that came before us. You inherit the literary culture as well as produce within that culture. Do you really believe that reading Shakespeare or John Donne or Rilke is going to deprive you of your voice? Or do you think it's going to infuse you with the potential that poetry can have when it is expressed at its best level?
So, is step one always do your reading, do your research on the greatest poets, or what is step one?
I would say, one key piece of advice, which I would say will become obvious if it's not already, but it's like have a notepad, have a pen, notice the things in the world that stick out to you because there are things that are going to stick out to you. Maybe it's through a memory that it triggers, or maybe it's just through something that you find aesthetically interesting. I think a lot of beginner poets think that you need to write really complicatedly to write something profound, and that over time, what you probably learn is that clarity is where the most mysterious and the most convincing poems are. So if you find yourself, like I used to, using words that are big and long and not really necessary to the poem, images that are confusing and all over the place, and also, if you're trying to convince the reader of how wacky and strange your mind is, rather than just gifting them an experience of strangeness or something pleasurable within your poem, I think there are some common mistakes. So, to go a bit deeper into that, if you think about the incomprehensibleness of the cloud giving ridiculousness of the everything. That's abstract, abstract, abstract. I don't think there's much profound in there. Robert Hass, who's a former poet laureate of the United States, has a poem where an orange gets sliced in half.
Hmm.
And as the orange gets sliced in half, it turns into two lovers from memory. The way it's written is really simple, but it's a really complicated idea, putting the orange together with lovers. It's a really interesting way of like bringing things together, but it's not done through all that other language that I was speaking about before. It's concrete. You can see it, you can feel it, you're there.
I love that image of, and especially because they are two halves of a whole, right? Coming apart. Um, and obviously the juiciness and the tenderness of slicing fruit. So, just as a side note,
Great way to put it. Yeah. Better than my analysis.
I've never read that poem, but that what a beautiful image. And we met Robert Haas and his wife Brenda Hillman during your poet laureateship, so that was really exciting as well. I need to read that poem.
Yeah, they both read for us.
So we've identified a big mistake here then for beginner poets. Perhaps writing too complicated or too obscurely for what the intention of the poem is.
Mhm.
What do you think is the best way to remedy that?
Find ways you can take something complex and find ways to turn them into images. Don't worry about them being perfect right from the off. But if you want to talk about, let's say, death, it's a giant concept, but you can represent death as death is typically represented as a skeleton lying down in the dirt or as a flower like slowly like knuckling back to closure. There are ways to show it in image without you having to again say like the incomprehensibility of the massiveness that is death. When you're sharing a poem, you're showing the reader the experience so that they can have the experience themselves. So if you're telling them too much what something is, you're not inviting them into the experience, you're telling them the experience that you might have had or the one that you think they should have.
Hmm.
So making it more simple and making it more imagistic alludes to the experience. And then we can go, oh, I feel that with you.
So, without getting too into the nitty gritty details, I'd love to hear, in the words of our friend Sean Coletti, who's been on our podcast as well, he refers to something as his poetry pantheon, which unfortunately we didn't get to dig in with him on our podcast. So, hopefully, we can have that conversation again with Sean. But who would be in your poetry pantheon in terms of maybe poets you'd recommend to a beginner poet?
So by the Pantheon, we're talking about if you were to create a at least a top hierarchy of 7, 9, 11, however many you feel is right to you, of your poetry, almost like mythic gods. They don't have to replace the god that you believe in, but like a mythology of the poets that sit above you that filter into you. That's what you mean by Pantheon, right?
Yeah, and again, I love this idea. This is not our idea. It's come from talks with our friend Sean. But I would love to hear who's in yours.
So right at the top, I would put Ted Hughes, Federico Garcia Lorca, Rilke, Yeats, Kathleen Rain. Off the top of my head, there are more. I am influenced by hundreds. I am majorly influenced by 10 or so, and then others will come in as we go on.
That's definitely true. And if anyone who knows us personally or is getting a glimpse into the bookshelves behind us, our home is filled with books, and Nathan is always having several poetry, either craft books or collections or other works on the go at any given point. So I know your pantheon is always expanding, but what a strong group of poets anyway. So in another episode, we'll have to dive a little bit deeper into why you love those poets. I'm really curious though, thinking about all of those different poets. Is there a connecting thread between them for you?
Yeah, I would say there's at least two things going on that connects them all. One is spiritual reverence. All of them have a spiritual reverence, but they're all different. Like Kathleen Rain and Rilke, to me, seem to look up more. Ted Hughes and Lorca seem to look either down or in the body more. So what I mean by that is Rains tends to be, and Rilke's tends to be more the light coming from the divine. Ted Hughes and Lorca tend to be more, I'm in the shadow, I'm in the duende, I'm in the darkness, I'm in the material world, and there's mythological brilliance here and terror, and I really like how these things find each other and are brought into tension. So,
Mm.
and as for Yeats, I think a bit like Hughes, but he's the most esoterically minded. And Yeats, especially his later work, has some of the best poems in the English language, like Sailing to Byzantium and The Second Coming. So I highly recommend reading those poems. They're widely available online.
Wonderful answer. And I think no matter what level you're at, whether you're just starting out writing poetry or you've been writing poetry for years, reading poetry from the likes of poets like that can only do good for your poetry practice. So I love that you brought that up as well, Nathan. I think bringing it back a little bit to the journey as a beginner poet, someone that maybe they've just started writing, they're practicing, they're playing. What is the best tool or exercise that you would recommend to somebody who wants to get better at their craft, but maybe they don't know where to start?
Yeah. I would say start editing your work if you don't do that already. Some beginners will write first drafts and think this is the pure raw expression, this is the best. That is highly unlikely that the best thing has come out from the off. If you're already in that phase and you do already edit, you can either solicit feedback if you feel ready for it. You want honest feedback. If you ask someone, what do you think of this poem? You want to enter the spirit of play with them and the spirit of let's make this better together if they're willing to give that sort of feedback. Be very clear about the sort of feedback that you want from someone. This is good communication generally to say, like, I'm looking for this. Maybe you want encouragement. Because I'll take this from my own example. I've worked with a beginner poet before. Let's call him Craig. And Craig came to me with things that he had only just started writing. So when I read Craig's work and I see plenty of the mistakes, but my focus right at the beginning is to ensure that Craig keeps writing. If we get feedback too early in where we are, it can actually shut us down and disinhibit our impulse to want to write more. So encouragement is really important. And then I think people, pointing you to guides that will help you become better, reading about poetry online from articles, and reading other poets to kind of learn what they're doing is a good early stage. But if you're in the feedback stage, seek it with curiosity, let the other person be open and curious, and allow their feedback to go in, and then you decide and discern what works for you and what doesn't.
And I know, I mean, for many people, getting critical feedback can be really difficult, especially when it's something that is really close to your heart. Maybe you've been working on it a long time, you care a lot about the piece or what you're working on. How do you handle that type of critical feedback?
If I receive it,
Hmm.
so I still can be sensitive to the feedback. And I notice if I feel sensitive, if my ego's still too wrapped up in the work, let the feedback come in and wait a couple days or a week or however long it takes, come back to the feedback and then realize how useful it is. So if I hear something and I don't feel ready in the moment, it's still let that be there. Like, so the feedback, like, I don't need to completely reject it. I forget what was said. I'm just like, okay, that stung. I'm not ready. That's fine.
Right. And I think, like you said, it's important. Even if somebody gives you feedback, you don't necessarily need to integrate all of that feedback into your piece or your work. Um, you obviously have that authority to take some things on board and say, okay, maybe I don't agree with this sort of feedback, which is also fair in that journey. I like what you mentioned as well as it being a general communication tool for people, even in our own relationships. Sometimes it's helpful to say, are we on a solutions channel? Do I want a solution to my problem? Or do I just want someone to listen? Or am I looking for encouragement or validation? You know, at some point as a poet, you need to probably get some sort of constructive criticism in order to improve. But sometimes, if you're just starting out, it may be too early for that. And you should respect those feelings in yourself as well. At least I think.
The worst thing you can do is to stop writing. The best thing you can do is to, along with keep writing, is to get better at writing. So the question is always, is this going to help me become a better writer or a better poet? You see the big picture, you're more able to receive that sort of feedback because you can go, thinking long term. Okay, poetry happens in the present that you're writing, but like how much better will you be in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years if you get feedback, especially from experts?
Wonderful. I love it. So, Nathan, I have one more question for you. But before I ask you that, I just wanted to say quickly, if there's anyone out there that's struggling, that wants to become a better poet, click the link below in the description and you can join the Poetry Vessel mailing list. We share all sorts of tips and personal stories and courses and workshops and events, all different ways that you can become a better poet too. Now that I've said that marketing tidbit,
Doodah.
I wanted to ask you if you were to name just three things, because sometimes it's hard for us to condense into just three things, especially Nathan and I. We want to go off and talk about all the different ways that you can become a better poet. But if I had to limit you to three things that you would recommend for anybody either starting off writing or still in their beginner journey of becoming a better poet, what would be the three things that you recommend to that person?
Get a notepad and a pen. Use the physical act of writing and bring it around you everywhere. Think of a child walking around with their teddy bear that wants to be connected to it. Like, keep that notepad with you. And whenever you see something that sticks out, write it. 2, write every single day, even if you don't feel like it, even if you don't write a ton. It can be 2 sentences. It doesn't matter if it's good or not. Just write something. Practicing, getting into the mode, layering your brain with like, this is what we're doing every day will allow you to become better. And 3, make sure you edit. Let's say you don't want to write that day, but you have all this other stuff that you've already written. Okay, take that and make something out of it or rewrite it. Always practice techniques. And a bonus one, make sure you read.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week. Again, if you want to become a better poet, make sure you click the link below to join our mailing list. As part of this new Master Your Craft series, we're also looking for questions from you. So if you have a question for us, please leave it in the comments below. We might pick it and include it in one of our future videos. We'd love to hear from you. We read all the comments. And of course, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you, everyone.